You've written an absolute ton. You're a very prolific writer. And we noticed a few things, but we want to focus on Forgotten Choice, which is not your only title. And we also want to direct people to look at the range of your books.
Thank you.
The subtitle is Shift Your Inner Mindset, Shape Your Outer World. And I guess one of the things I'd like to kick off with is, did you have someone in mind or some cohort or kind of archetype of person in mind when you were writing this? What was this to? Is this a letter to someone?
Well, I don't know if a letter to a specific individual, but Kevin, I work with very successful leaders. I'm an executive coach at the very senior level of big organizations. And these are people who have money, fame, title, status, cars, boats, you name it. They're very, very successful. And yet they feel that they're lacking something. They're still not completely fulfilled. And almost, well, without a doubt, inevitably it becomes because they're looking outside for their validation instead of looking inside. And the power of the inside is it's where it all starts. And so many executives don't recognize that. People working in our work lives, we don't recognize that. We pay attention to what's happening out here, but we don't pay attention as much to what's happening inside. And it really is an inside job. Leadership starts first and foremost as an inside job. So really that's the impetus for writing the book. A little bit of an opportunity for my clients to say, hey, read this book, let's get started here as we think about your journey for strengthening your own development and where you want your life to be.
If you can suffer a shameless compliment right at the outset, I do intend to challenge you on some things, so it's not going to be hopefully just some big shine fest. But if you can suffer a shameless compliment, you've done what I think many nonfiction writers in the business category fail to do, which is you kept the book to the size of the topic. I'm not saying it doesn't sort of touch and lead into some other topics, which I think some of your other books expound, but it's written to the scope of the topic the problem or the idea you bring up, and then it stops. Which I don't know if that's the same with your experience, but a lot of books are sort of 3.5 books all rammed into one. Maybe to get page count, I don't know. But
well, I did want to keep it relatively short and to the point, because the people I deal with and work with don't have a lot of free time. So I wanted to hit the point, hopefully make it solid and give them things to think about.
Yeah. I'm going to resist the temptation of asking you the nerdiest question, which is, what is the forgotten choice? Let's just save that and see if folks can dig it out from the conversation. But maybe if you can say more about self-talk. I think this is a powerful idea, and I'd like to hear you just share what that's about.
So there is an inner conversation, an inner dialogue happening day in and day out, 24/7, that we honestly usually don't pay attention to. It's like wallpaper. The old test of walk into a room, walk out, and someone says, what color was the wallpaper? And you go, I don't know. I have no idea. I wasn't paying attention. We do the same with our inner dialogue. It's happening all the time, and it shapes and forms our life more than we give it credit for. What we say to ourselves is the most important conversation. It's the most important conversation we have, because it is informing how we think, and how we think informs how we feel, and how we feel informs how we behave. How we behave informs the results that we get. But we don't pay much attention to the self-talk, the inner dialogue. We just don't pay much attention. And so when you can drive the awareness of that and say, oh, what am I saying to myself? Is that the voice I really want to listen to? Which thought system is this coming from, right? There's only two. One that's based on fear, and one that's based on what I call the joy of possibility, potentiality. Which voice am I listening to right now? And it will inform your success in your finances, your relationships, your career, your job, whatever you want. It is informing, that self-talk is informing the outcomes you get. So that's why it's just so important.
So I reckon there's that talk has a tone, and it has maybe patterns of mistakes. It isn't just so simple as, oh, you get down on yourself. So can there be self-talk that is unjustifiably positive?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. Because honestly, we spend so much time telling ourselves we're not good enough. That wasn't good enough. What was I thinking? I can't believe you said that. We're so busy doing that, that even if I think to understand the power of what we really are capable of and to recognize that it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. Even if you're off a little bit, it's okay. We're so busy beating ourselves up that a little bit of accolades goes a long way. And to be honest, I don't run across a lot of people who do what you just said, how great I am. I'm so much greater than everyone thinks. No, I don't hear that a lot. Most of the time, we're so busy convincing ourselves why we're not good enough, why we didn't say the right thing, why we didn't, stand up in front of that group and speak the way we wanted to, that it's rare that someone goes overboard and goes too far the other way. And to be honest, if you're really in what I call the joy of possibility, it's a space, it's being in the zone, Kevin. It's being in the zone. It's that feeling of the best athletes, the best artists go there all the time. Why don't we as business people do that? Why don't we get more in the zone? And often it's because we're working in an ego space, where it's your definition of success depends on your title and your level in the organization and how much money you're making. All of that's out here. And true success does come from the inside, and allowing yourself to just be in the zone, I call it, that place of truly understanding joy of possibility and what the potentiality can be for you.
Have you read Mihai Csikszentmihalyi on flow, the concept of flow?
I do know the concept of flow. I haven't read that particularly, but I definitely understand the concept of flow. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think in our experience, our work is to build academies for organizations. They figure out, like, what do we want to teach and learn here, and who can help us get on with that in a structured way. That's Sage's work. And flow, which many people have picked up off of he was sort of the original architect of the idea, great psychologist. That has really released a lot of folks in our experience to understand, why is it that I'm sometimes in the zone? I mean, it's almost spiritually transcendent. I'm like, I am put on this earth to do this amazing, difficult thing that I'm doing, right on the edge of my capabilities, but thriving, succeeding. Yeah, so I think there's something interesting about the inner talk, the self-talk related to that. So what's the connection there? Is it that you couldn't get to that zone if you hadn't already dealt with the self-talk?
So let me go back to kind of a foundation piece, which is, and I mentioned this in the book at the beginning, which is about 100 years ago, physicists were desperately trying to figure out what was at the foundation of the atom, the base of the atom. Why? Because the atom represents everything. We are made up of atoms, animals, plants, the universe, everything we see, touch, experience, including ourselves, are made up of just atoms. That's what they discovered. They knew that. But then, so if they could figure out what was at the base of the atom, if they could figure that out, they would have figured out the answer to all things in the universe, right? The foundation of everything is at the base of that atom. What is it? So finally, in the 1930s, they split the atom, right? They split the atom. And what did they find? Basically nothing tangible. All they found was vibrating energy. We are nothing but vibrating energy. That's really interesting, right? And it scared a lot of people because what do you do with vibrating energy? I don't know what to do with that. It's so intangible, right?
Yeah.
But of course, but because they were looking for things that were more tangible. But the truth is, it's the intangible that is the foundation of everything that we are. That's why the inside job is so important. So how do we test our vibrating energy to know what it is? Again, there's only two systems it can be in, one that's fear-based and one that is the joy of possibility. Well, if you think about that, the joy of possibility, when you are in the joy of possibility, that's when you are in the flow. That's when your self-talk is consistent with the way you are feeling, the way you are, that in the zone self-talk. It's when things are full of possibility, potentiality. And so the self-talk informs you which systems, vibrating energy systems am I in? Am I in one that is fear-based? I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I didn't do that well. Or am I one of possibility, potentiality?
Yeah.
Growth?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So one of the phrases that you use is, I am learning to fill in the blank. Very interesting to me because it isn't Pollyanna-ish, right? It's not sort of like, I'm already just fantastic. There's nothing more that I need to be. 5 stars out of 5 stars me, which I don't think, especially for like the class of leaders that you work with, they would just spot that as false and saccharine, and maybe not see you next Tuesday or something. But tell me about a phrase like, I'm learning to blank.
Yeah. Let's say that someone wants to, I don't know, give me an example of someone you know that wants to improve something. What would it be? Just give me an example.
One of my team members, Sharat, wants to improve the way that he interacts with senior people.
Beautiful. All right. So if I ask him what his current belief is about how he interacts with other people, current senior people, he might say something like, I don't believe I don't deserve a place at the table with them because I'm not as smart or as capable as them. Okay. I'm just going to make this up. I don't know. And so I said, okay, so that's the belief that's driving the outcomes you're getting. We need to change that belief. So how would you change that belief? And so Shara could say, well, okay, I'll say that I am good enough. I am smart enough. Well, if you don't really fundamentally believe that, that's just putting pink paint on top of things. It's just sprinkling fairy dust and hoping it's all going to go away. And it won't. What you have to do is recognize that it's a learning journey to get from that fear state of I'm not good enough. I can't stand up in front of those seniors into a place of actually, if I own who I really am, I can do that. And so that learning journey is a learning journey instead of just going the direct opposite. I love the phrase, I am learning to, because no matter what you're doing in life, that's true. We're all learning. The first time you learned to ride a bike, when you fell off, you didn't just say, okay, I'll never get on a bike again. No, you picked yourself back up and you got back on the bike. And it's the same with our mind. It's the same with our beliefs. We just say, I'm learning this. I'm learning this. And I'm telling you, that phrase works with people all the way up to CEOs, board chairs. I am learning to, because life is just one big learning journey. And we're often too hard on ourselves. I'm not there fast enough. I should know this stuff by now. I have CEOs that come in, and I had a CEO, 32 years old, running a 7,500 person organization. Wow. And yeah, 32 years old, brilliant mind, brilliant person. And he's like, after about 6, 7 sessions, he said, when am I ever going to get this stuff right? He's 32 years old. 2 hours later, in my office walks a 54-year-old CEO. He's 6, 7 sessions. When am I ever going to get this right? And I love that. It's like, we're never going to get it right. It's not about perfection. It's about learning. And that's why I love that phrase. I am learning to.
So once somebody, take these cases you just shared, once somebody says to themselves, I am learning to, what happens next?
They give themselves a break. That's the most important part, because we hold ourselves to such stringent standards and we must do it perfectly. We must do it right. it isn't about perfection. Perfection is actually unattainable. It's not attainable. And if it is, it's attainable for a second, and then it doesn't become perfect anymore. So it really is about trying to strive for excellence. Excellence is fine. Excellence is a good feeling, right? But when you are learning to, it's like learning to ride a bike. Well, I recognize I'm going to fail. When I'm learning something, I'm going to fail, right? And so you give yourself a break, and that's what it's all about. And what happens is the energy that comes, the original energy of I'm not good enough, I should, I'm not the kind of person I should be in front of these senior leaders, becomes, I'm learning to be my natural self and to bring forth the value that I can offer in front of senior leaders. And I'm excited by the potentiality of that. The energy is such a big shift. The outcomes you get will be different.
What do board members need to learn?
Oh, the same as all of us, right? When am I right? When the whole sense of am I saying something in a way that's influencing versus controlling? A lot of board members come from they were former executives, for example, right? And former executives, what happens with them? They were in control. They could tell you what to do, and that was the right thing to do. You can't do that on a board, so you have to learn how to influence. You have to learn the art of influencing. You have to learn to think the big strategic things instead of getting into the minutiae details. I mean, transitioning into a board and being on a board is a very different experience than being a CEO or a senior leader.
Do you coach them?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Coaching a group right now. Yeah. A group of board members. Mm-hmm.
A group?
Mm-hmm.
What's that like?
No, it's exciting. It's fun. I mean, it's great. It's fine. It's no different. The issues are typically the same. So here, let me share. So the what, Kevin, is the same almost all the time. When it comes to leadership, self-leadership, the way we want to be, the what can vary, but we have a goal of something we like to achieve. It's the how that shifts. Mm-hmm. Right? And I work across multiple cultures. I've coached 60 different nationalities. So the how might need to be adjusted. We might need to meander our way a little bit differently, but ultimately the what is the same, the ultimate outcomes.
I'm quite curious about this idea of a group and how it harmonizes with the inner voice. So if you sat with 4 individuals, so mm-hmm. Bigger than a tiny group, but mm-hmm. smaller than a big one. Mm-hmm. Can you take them as a group through the concept of their self-talk? Of
course, absolutely. We're all human. We're all experiencing the same thing. Yeah. Now, what they choose to share and not share is up to them. And I usually do one-on-one sessions with groups too. So I do group coaching and team coaching. By the way, they're 2 different things. Just to do a little interval there.
Yes, please.
Team coaching is when the team has an objective they're working towards together.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a leadership team that wants to move in a certain direction and get the company to a certain area. Group coaching is when it's a set of individuals that each one has their own individual goal that they want to achieve, but they are not working together to get to those goals. That's the difference between team coaching and group coaching. So again, depending upon how I was treating a group, a leadership team group, or whatever their intention was, I would approach it differently. Whether I would talk individually with them about their inner dialogue, or whether we would talk as a group.
Yeah. I want to make a lateral jump, if you'll indulge me. Do you have the inner coach? And here you talk about some really interesting things, and they border on the edge of people going, wait, this is too woohoo, voodoo science for me now. But I'd really like to actually touch on those a sec. So things like the song lyrics that course through your head, the things that you just seem to randomly pay attention to, the fellow that you barely knew back in high school whose image keeps on coming up in your mind on a random Wednesday or something. Those are maybe some of the more out there things, but there's other anecdotes and examples you use of this concept of the inner coach. I don't know what to ask you other than just can you expound? Can you just riff on
Sure.
this for a bit? I think it's
Sure.
fascinating.
So when we're born, we are born as a clean slate. We are born fully tuned in to the energy of that joy of possibility. That's why children are so happy. That's why they're so full of joy. We love to be around them because we can feel that. Remember, at the base of us all is a sense of energy, vibrating energy. Which energy are we vibrating at, right? And this isn't woo, this is science. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. It's we discovered it 100 years ago. We aren't really doing much with it anymore, right? Because we don't know what to do with it. But when we're born with that slate, and we're tapped into that inner coach, that I call it, that is constantly communicating with us, constantly. And it is a vibrating energy that's in that higher space, right? It's that kind of, if you follow that energy, that higher vibrating energy, your life will be really a joy and an adventure. It really will. I mean, this is, again, not woo, it's just science. This is the way it works. And that voice, that inner coach, as children, starts to get covered up. Society, our parents, our teachers, our peers, our siblings tell us things. They squash us down. You have this moment of brilliance, and your parents say, no, you shouldn't do that. That's not consistent with our society. And so we learn these things very early on. And so we put like lids on all this, and we just keep putting those lids on and lids on and lids on. And what happens is, over time, is we start to believe that's the norm. Well, that's just the way everybody does it. So it's okay for me to do it that way too. And that voice of the inner coach, which was so strong when we were younger, starts to diminish. It's still speaking. It's still talking to us, exact same way. But it gets weaker and weaker because we're listening to the other voice, the voice of fear, the voice of I'm not good enough, the voice of this is the way it's done, so we have to stick to that. Now, as we get older and older, more and more of that kind of sticks on us, and it becomes harder and harder for us to believe anything other than what we've come to believe. Let me share briefly. We think a thought, or thought comes to us. Usually a thought comes to us, or something like that, a thought. And that thought we think again and again and again and again, Kevin, and it becomes a belief. And that belief we believe again and again and again, and it becomes our version of what we call the truth. But it's our version of what we call the truth. Now, to look at that from that perspective, is that version of the truth consistent with what the inner coach would tell us is the truth? Remember, that voice that's been around for as long as we've been living. Does that coincide? Is that truth consistent? Now, what I do is I help leaders work backwards to say, is the truth you're living today really the truth? Or is it a learned behavior, a learned set of beliefs and systems and the way you act, react, look, sound that you just simply adopted over time? Is it true? Is it really connected to that higher level of inner coach? And once you can start to peel back the layers and delete it and get rid of it, it is the most, I want to say miraculous, but it's not. It's actually normal. What happens? It's extraordinary. And that's when you release your true greatness.
Okay, so there's two voices then that we're talking about. One we've been talking about self-talk, and the issue that you're more focused on there is negative self-talk and how to reorient it. I think, but correct me if I misphrase any of this. And then you've got the inner coach, and actually that is just sort of a very positive voice that's saying, like, look, there's a reason you're singing U2 lyrics or something, and pay attention to it, and like don't discount it.
So let me just, if you don't mind, correct that a little bit.
Yes.
So we have self-talk, and self-talk comes in two forms. Okay. There's the inner coach, which we've talked about, and there's the inner defeatist, I call it. Okay. The inner defeatist, which is the voice of fear. And we have the inner coach, which is the voice of the joy of possibility. So remember, there's these two thought systems.
Yes.
One fear, one joy of possibility. And the voice for them is the inner defeatist and the inner coach. And so the question around self-talk at any moment is, which voice are you listening to? And the way you know, remember, we're just vibrating energy at the foundation of everything. Science tells us that. The way you know is, does it feel good? It's that simple. Do I feel good, or do I feel something's not quite right? And if you feel good, you're pretty clear that you're tuned into that inner coach. If you don't feel great, I guarantee you you're steeped in thoughts and beliefs and truths around fear.
Mhm. Do you have clients or students who say, I listened to this and it felt good initially, but in the long run it didn't, and therefore I was mistaken about which voice?
Yeah, I mean, it happens. Look, it's like tuning a radio in the old days when we had to tune to a radio, right? You have to turn the dial to get the right connection. And we often don't do enough to practice that connection. Remember, when we were born with that connection, a brilliant connection we were born with, but over time it's gotten a little rusty, right? It's as if our radar is kind of off a little bit. So we need to just remind ourselves of that connection, which has always been there, but we just have to remind ourselves a little bit about that. Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's go back. Think, feel, behave, results.
Yeah.
Think, then feel, then behave, then results.
Yeah.
You describe it as a pyramid. Actually, you describe it as two pyramids.
Yeah.
Can we just draw that for people's and look, if you say this and we think it's helpful to literally lay on a diagram, we'll do so when we do the video.
Sure,
We'll add the diagram.
No worries. Well,
can you just go through it?
I can explain it. Picture yourself, there's a pyramid in front of you, and there's 4 sections of that pyramid, kind of separated by horizontal lines. In the bottommost part of the pyramid, I ask people to write the word think, okay? Because it all starts with thoughts. That's where we come from. All reality starts with thoughts. It's just the way we work. So what the thinking, move up to the next one. The next section we call feel. Now, thinking and feeling, Kevin, those are in the bottom half of the pyramid, the biggest, strongest part of the pyramid, because that's where it all starts. That's why the inside job of leadership is just so important. But it's on the inside. I don't know what you're thinking and feeling, Kevin. You don't know what I'm thinking and feeling. No one's going to know that. But what I do know is above those 2, the next one up is how you feel informs how you behave. So write the word behave in that part of the pyramid. And that I do see, and the outcomes of your behavior is your results. Up at the very top is the results. So your behavior and your results, those are outside. I know how you are behaving and the results that you're getting, because I can see that. But it all starts on the inside. And that's why the inside job is just so important. It starts with our thoughts and our beliefs and what we believe to be the truth, informing the base of those pyramids that move ourselves up. Now, the reason you say there's 2 pyramids is because there's only really one pyramid. It's the same concept, but what you fill in the base of the thought with is what's most critical. For example, is it a fear-based thought? Is it a thought based on the joy of possibility? Just like when we talked with Shara, you talked about that, how you could take that and move it from the left, so let's say left side, the fear-based, into the joy of possibility base. You're going to get different outcomes. You're going to get different outcomes at the top. And it's so much fun to work with executives as you work through these pyramids and you go, oh my goodness, because that fear-based pyramid, I promise you, it's a vicious cycle. I don't believe that I can perform well in front of others, and particular senior leaders. How does it make me feel? Nervous, uncomfortable when I have to be in front of senior leaders. What do? I maybe don't speak appropriately. I maybe I hold back and don't talk at all. I stay silent, or when I do talk, I mutter and make a mistake. And so what's the outcome? The outcome is I don't perform well in front of senior executives. It's exactly what you thought. What you think is what you get. The bottom informs the top, and it is a vicious cycle. It will not stop because the outcomes are confirming the belief, and the belief confirms the outcomes. And it's just this ongoing pyramid. When you can shift to the joy of possibility and really start to say, I am learning, for example, to perform great in front of senior leaders, or I'm learning to be comfortable and perform very well in front of senior leaders. How does that make you feel when you walk into a meeting with leaders? More comfortable. I feel more at ease, more my natural self, more authentic. And so how do I behave? I speak up when I feel it's the right thing to do. I offer my thoughts and my perspectives, knowing that I'm learning. And so
take some chances because I want to learn.
Take some chances. Yeah, I'm going to take some chances because I want to learn. And that's how we learn. And so what's the outcome? You do perform better in front of senior leaders. And that becomes a virtuous circle. So you've got this vicious cycle and this virtuous circle when you can switch that belief. And it all starts with the belief, all of it. It's fun when you start to realize this, Kevin, because you realize how much you're in charge of your outcomes.
Joy of possibility. Again, I can see now it isn't a free license to just insert any random pie in the sky belief. Otherwise, that cycle won't obtain. Am I right? So
Well,
if instead of saying I'm learning to be great in front of more senior executives, you just say I am sensational when it comes to senior. It's like that's going to last all the way until the middle of the pyramid and then fall apart.
Actually, it won't even last that long, because once you get to feelings, if it's not really true, it won't feel right. You won't feel it. That barometer, the barometer for how well we're doing is how we feel. If it's real, if you're aligned with the joy of possibility, it's just a connection feeling. It feels great. And so once you took that thought, that fake thought, which isn't real, it's I am great in front of senior leaders, and you take it to the feeling and you say that to yourself and you go, no, not having it. It doesn't work. It doesn't feel right. I can feel that it's not correct. And so when that's the case, what happens is you have to go back to something like I am learning to. Yeah.
What about the blank slate?
Meaning?
You had said that we begin as a blank slate.
Right. Right. So, I'm not a parent, so I'm not going to point fingers at parents, but parents do the best they can. They don't know. There's no textbooks. Okay, there are a few textbooks, but the truth is, everyone has a different opinion about how to be a parent. But those first 5 to 6 years of our life, it says that those thoughts and the beliefs that we're absorbing, and literally we are operating at different vibration when we're a child. I mean, this is, again, science has proven that. And when we bring in those thoughts and beliefs, and actually we're adopting them from society, social media, whatever it might be, our parents, they become our truths. And I don't think we recognize as parents, as guardians, as whatever, siblings, how important those first 5 to 6 years are. It's as if we're creating a film, we're producing a film in our lives, and we're projecting that out for the rest of our lives. Those first 5 to 6 years, we create a film inside ourselves, and the rest of our lives, we're projecting that film. And we send people saying to me, why do I keep getting the same things over and over and over again? Whether it's at work or home or my finances, this situation's coming up. And you start to realize it really does come back to those limiting beliefs that we absorbed as children.
Can people do this without a coach, realistically?
Well, remember, you've got the inner coach.
Right.
So there's always a coach with you. The question is, are you listening to it? And part of our challenge, Kevin, is we've been so trained to listen to the voice of fear, this inner defeatist, for so many years. Many people work with decades, right? Decades, that can be kind of hard because we don't know how to challenge ourselves in a way that an outer coach can help challenge.
Yeah. And
by the way, I don't mean challenge like negative. It's like gently saying, hey, here's what I'm seeing. Oh, right. Yeah. It's that aha moment of someone else. We can never see ourselves the way others can, but it's that ability to have someone else help mirror back what's being seen. Yeah.
Do coaches pick this up from you?
Some. I haven't really spent my time focusing on teaching coaches to do this. I have had some write to me and say, oh my gosh, I'm going to integrate this into my coaching practice. This is amazing. I love it. And they want to know more information. But I focus mainly on my particular, client base, which is helping leaders. That whole phrase, that whole adage, Kevin, it's lonely at the top. It's totally true. I used to be an executive in a big corporations, 2 of them. it's lonely. I mean, who do you turn to? You can't turn to your boss. You can't turn to your direct reports. You can't turn to your peers. So who do you turn to? And to have that objective external voice, that's part of my life mission, is to help leaders understand that it doesn't have to be lonely and that it doesn't have to be the way it is. You can live a completely fulfilled life, have a wonderful career, be the kind of leader that you want to be and that others want to follow. You just have to learn to let go of some of those limiting beliefs that are holding you back.
When did this come to you?
I would say, honestly, it's about 10 years of in the process.
Yeah.
And of that 10 years, 4 years, it took me 4 years to write this book, Kevin. Now I write a book a year. I'm very prolific, as you mentioned earlier. It's not difficult for me to write a book because it just comes to me. But on this one, I think my inner defeatist was constantly I was keeping it at bay, if I go to this space, is it going to be too woo-woo? Will people think this is, too out of, left field? And the truth is, after I worked through it myself, I said, that's not serving anybody. The truth is, we're holding ourselves back from our greatness, and by not addressing these opportunities and issues. And so it took me 4 years to write the book, though, and I finally released it. Yeah.
I am learning to write a book on the pyramid.
Exactly.
Yeah, on job. Yeah.
On job. Yeah. Job.
It's lonely at the top is a phrase that I wanted to actually put to you. It's fascinating that you brought it up yourself.
That's not fascinating, Kevin. That's natural. Remember we talked about, right? That just means you and I are both in line with the inner coach, right? And that's something we're supposed to talk about, right?
Well, we see that a fair bit. I can share an anecdote or two that I think may seem like it relates to what you're looking at. One of our interesting topics right now is vertical development. So what's the right, if you teach and learn at work and you need an academy and an organization, at what level, what ought you to be learning and what ought the organization to be teaching? Because it's different on your first day in a boot camp, and there's your desk there, and here's your device, and there's your name cards, all the way up to even past the senior executive where people are in the board seat. That's why I was asking you about the boards. It's a very interesting, almost invisible but significant feature of an organization, and the learning's not over.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the observations is that when we work with law firms, the very senior partners tend to be incredibly open to learning. These are people who do not have a spare second, and yet there they are, asking questions, mucking in, assuming nothing, really keen to, Q&A. And actually the most resistant learners are about 4 to 7 years in.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and I think what I've seen is that there's something there about the inner voice and your "I'm learning too" quote that may be going on. I don't know what it is yet, but I thought I'd share that kind of field anecdote with you.
So what I have noticed, so it's funny you talk about the vertical learning process, and what I think you're meaning by that phrase is, when I was at Procter & Gamble, for example, we had very clear learning path to move from this to this to this to this. And there was a measurable, like you could demonstrate that you could master that task, master that skill, master that talent, whatever, by moving to the, and once you did that, then you moved to the next level, then you mastered that and moved to the next level, et cetera. So that was very tangible, very measurable. Well, you said about, it's interesting about senior people being more open and more excited. What I have found is this: when we're younger in our careers, companies throw money at you to develop, to grow. You're in training, you're getting mentoring, you're all these things. And honestly, to the point where people can barely get their work done because they're just so busy going to training programs and so busy doing this and so busy doing that, right? They don't have the chance to actually do the on-the-job work. And so there can be burnout on learning at that level. But when you get to the senior levels, and I hear this all of the time, which is why executive coaching at the high levels is so well received, is I haven't focused on my own development in years. The company doesn't do much at that level for us anymore. So it's a little bit like you get saturated early on in your career and you just get burned out on it. So I think what we need to do is pace the learning throughout the lifetime of someone, throughout an entire organization. And that's what P&G did, by the way. They always, no matter what level you had, there was a level of self-learning and next steps and what you were going to learn from this and how you could grow. But I think it could be what you're experiencing, Kevin. That's what I see in organizations. There's such a saturation at the lower levels of training and development that by the time they get there, they're just like, let me just do my work. I want to get this done and prove that I can do this. Whereas at the senior levels, they just don't get that much attention.
I will, after we speak, I will share with you some of the work by Karim Hirani, who's another author that we interviewed. He's the one who brought vertical development to us. It's actually much more stage of life oriented as opposed to career matriculation.
Okay.
Through capabilities and say titles, and it's a beautiful line of thinking. It's sort of like what is going to be the right kind of harmony with the tasks that you're doing in your life at work, resonating with the fact that when you're 23, you feel bulletproof. There's 100 different things that you'd like to take on. You just have an incredible sense of, capability mixed with opportunity. That overall sentiment is different when you're 53, at which time you feel like you want to sort of give back, you want to teach and share. There's a whole series of classic kind of moorings and values that tend to appear at different general stages of life. You can't mark them exactly by age, but you can configure them across cultures, across gender, etc., in this way. So his work on vertical development is really mapping those things.
So the question I would raise, just because we're on this topic, is are you tuned into the inner coach throughout that entire journey?
Right.
Because if you are, for example, the 23-year-old who can do anything and they've got a candy store of options in front of them, and I want to do this and I want to do that and I want to do this. Is it really, what's behind that is what I would ask. Is it really driven by that joy of possibility? Or is it driven by, I must do that because I have to get that title. I must do that because I want to be able to say to others that I've done that. You'd be surprised, right? And even the 53-year-old, I remember I had a 52-year-old engineer walk into my office and just low energy, not satisfied. I said, tell me, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 is low, 10 is high. Let's talk passion. What's your passion for what you do? And he said 2. And I said, 2 is very low. I said, how long have you been feeling that? He said, 30 years. I said, tell me more. He said, my parents kind of informed that this is what I should do when I got out of university. So I've been doing it. But my point is, if you're really listening to the inner coach, you wouldn't have taken that job. But we turn outside instead to what people think we should be doing. And so the question I would ask, whether it's a 23-year-old or 53-year-old, are you tuning into that inner coach? Because frankly, if you are, that's the coach that's going to give you the best advice.
Mm-hmm. It's gonna be with you for the whole journey.
The whole journey. Yep.
What is your I want to go back, if you will, to some of the more surprising, unorthodox cases of the inner coach. I'll start with song lyrics. Can we just talk about that a bit? I think there's a lot of fun there, and I'll I prefaced this before with the idea of like people may think it's kind of voodoo science or something. That's just to say, of course, some people are going to receive that way, but let's play with it for a bit. Because I think you've looked at it longer than maybe anybody.
Yeah.
And so what do you see there? Like what kinds of things?
Well, first of all, let's go back to the why that's happening. So the inner coach is always trying to communicate. It is communicating all the time. Whether we're listening or not is foundational. Most of the time we're not. Remember, we're in that self-talk of listening to the inner defeatist more than we should. So it's always talking to us. Now, it knows how to best get your attention. And I happen to be a person who's really into music. And I can wake up some morning and a song is just going through my head, and it's going through my head. It could be 2 or 3 days of just going through my head. And suddenly I go, oh, let me check out the lyrics of that song. I'll check out the lyrics and I go, oh, I get it. Okay, yep, that solves the problem I was thinking about. And then the song goes away. It's served its purpose, right? So again, we have to trust that inner coach to know if there's something comes up like that, pause and ask yourself, what's going on? What's that about? Just get curious about it. Don't worry about it being woo-woo. Don't worry about it being, because woo-woo, what's woo-woo, by the way? When we think something's woo-woo, which foundation is that? Fear, right? What if people think I'm weird? What if people think I'm not going to fit in? Yeah, that doesn't serve you. My inner coach is talking to me through a song. Cool. Let me listen to the song. Let me see what it says. The worst that can happen is I say, oh, that's not true. I'm going to drop that, but it will come back in another way because it's just a message. It's just communicating. So it's just about, again, I love what your word was, fun. It is fun. It's fun because it becomes an adventure. You go, wow, this is really cool. There's many ways that things happen. I'll give an example. This is really fun. So I was trying to come up with a nice gift for my husband's 50th birthday, and I wanted to do something special. I had a few things I was going to give him, but I wanted to do something that was special. And I had this idea came to me and it felt right. So I knew it was kind of an inner coach idea. And it involved a mason jar, buying a mason jar. You know what a mason jar is? Like it used to be used for like, what do you call it? Storage of foods and things like that.
A big fat ring handle.
Yeah, exactly. I needed a mason jar. Okay. And I knew, I knew I wanted a blue one. Okay. I live in Singapore. I got to find a blue mason jar. I have no idea where to look for a blue mason jar. So one day I'm leaving but this is still in my head. One day I'm leaving my hair appointment or something. And I walk out and I pause and I say, okay, inner coach, I need that blue mason jar. I'd really love to find it right now. I get this nudge to say, walk that way, go to this mall that's like only 2 blocks away, just randomly 2 blocks away. Great. Okay, fine. So I walk 2 blocks away and I stand in front of this mall. Now I have been to this mall, Kevin, for 12 years. Okay. And I always go through this door over here, this main door. Suddenly I had this nudge to go left. I'm like, there isn't a door there. Well, okay, I'm going to walk. So I walked. Sure enough, there was a door there. I didn't even know there was a door there. So I walked into that door, go up 1 flight of stairs, turn to the left, there sits a blue mason jar. Okay. This is what I'm talking about. Life becomes an adventure. It's fun because you suddenly realize that you got a coach on your side who's running with you 24/7, just like a personal trainer, and allowing you to live kind of the life you really want to live. And that's whether it's leadership, career, finances, whatever, relationships, you name it. So it's fun. It's fun. I could do dozens of those examples that happen on a regular basis because I'm tuned in to that inner coach who has nothing but my best outcomes in mind.
Yeah. Are you a religious person?
I do not really practice a religion. No.
When people are religious and you introduce these ideas, do they say, oh, yes, I know this already?
So here's what's interesting. When I released the Forgotten Choice, I wasn't sure how people would respond. So I sent it to, oh gosh, probably a dozen or so people of various backgrounds, different nationalities, religions, belief systems. It was extraordinary. Every single person wrote back and said, oh my gosh, I didn't know you studied Buddhism. And oh gosh, that's so interesting. I didn't know that you knew so much about the Islam, religion. This is foundational. It wasn't about Buddhism. It wasn't about Islamic religion. It wasn't about Christianity. We had a lot of Christians say, oh, this is, Christian as well. It's not, it's human. It's human. This is how we operate. And I think science is more and more pointing that out to us now. But, and a lot of people need that science to justify it and to say, oh, okay, it's scientific, so it's okay. But the truth is, it's just the way we operate as humans. So it doesn't have to do with any particular dogma or any particular point of view or religion.
Well, I only ask because I think maybe the joy of saying, well, what incredible thing just happened in my dream, and not just saying, well, dreams are, psycho dormant nonsense. I'll ignore that immediately, but just saying, well, what if? The joy of saying something inside of me said, turn left and go to where there is no door, and there is one, and there's your mason jar. This just the fun that you can have in pulling those threads and seeing what happens.
But you have to trust.
Is actually talk about it's just human. I mean, what culture, especially in its more ancient roots, didn't have a very deep and significant symbolic language? So, I come from the prairies in Canada. If you ask the Blackfoot tribe whether it's meaningful or not meaningful that a crow is sitting over top of the chapel, I mean, there's no, they have already an assumed and built-in language for the significance of a crow sitting on the chapel.
Yeah.
So the Cartesian, right, the sort of maybe set of Enlightenment values and a deep love of science might be like, well, we immediately dismiss such things as fictitious nonsense. Well, and I think there's maybe a very healthy ebb of that tide where people can say, look, you don't have to subscribe wholesale to, Blackfoot symbology or something to say, I'm gonna double click that and just.
Yeah. And here's the thing. Again, the inner coach is going to communicate to you in any way it can, because it wants to support you and help you. It's just the way, again, we were born that way. That's humans. Humans, for as long as we have existed on this planet, have been running like this. This is not woo-woo. This is not weird. It's just what it is. It's just that we're not used to it. And actually back in about 300 years ago, Newtonian physics really pushed the pendulum towards, if it's not provable, tangible, mathematically proven, et cetera, it's not real. And actually before that, humans were much more in tune to this inner coach. And to your point about the pendulum swinging back, I think that is happening. It's taken several hundred years, but I think people got so enamored by if I can touch it, prove it, see it, then it's real, that we lost the inner connection. And all I'm asking is for leaders, people I work with, to find the balance. That's all. Of course, you can't ignore the outside. It's foundational. It's what the experience we're having. But if you want a better experience on the outside, it does start on the inside. And that's our willingness to look at it that way. And it will communicate to us in any way it can. So whether it's, if you need a crow sitting on top of a church, then that's what you'll get, right? It knows enough to communicate. It's basically infinite intelligence. It knows enough to help you find whatever way it's going to work. For me, it's music, right? Because the inner coach knows that that's my thing. So it works. Yeah. And
it sounds like the inner judge also talks at all times and has creative ways to get its voice. And again, one of the things about the inner defeatist, and this is very important to remember, it's not bad. It's not bad. It's not evil. It's not trying to hurt you. It really isn't. The inner defeatist is trying to keep you in line with what it knows to be the truth, what it believes to be the truth, what it thinks won't hurt you. It's trying to keep you safe. And so if something big comes up, and I'll give the example we talked earlier about speaking to senior leaders. So I'll just stay back and not be, I won't speak up. Why? Because I've done that before, and at least I was safe. May not have built the kind of brand I want for myself. I may not have made a difference I'd like, but at least I was safe. At least I didn't stick my neck out and get it cut off, right? Is it fear-based? So, it is fear-based. It absolutely is fear-based. Again, I'm not saying fear is bad. I'm not saying the inner defeatist is bad. It's simply trying to protect us from getting our neck stuck out and getting cut off. But if you took the same action with the inner coach as the guide, you'll get a different outcome, and it will feel completely differently. So I think that's important to remember, that people think,
ego bad, fear bad. It's actually, it serves a purpose, it serves a purpose. It's really there to help us learn and grow. But the best way to shift out of that is to rely and listen into the inner coach.
It's great stuff, Brenda. What kinds of people, what kinds of engagements, how would you like people to find you and engage you and work with you? What are you looking to do and think about and write next?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I've got a lot going on, I always do, but I work, brendabence.com is my website. You can always just go there and click on the contact and reach out to me that way. Again, I work primarily with in coaching with leadership teams and with C-suite executives. That's kind of my sweet spot. I work at that higher level. And my next project that I'm working on, Kevin, I'm so excited about it. I just started into it, but it's going really quickly. I have a new book coming out, and it's called Never Have Jet Lag Again.
Mm-hmm.
So many of the executives I work with, the senior leaders I work with, the people I know and love have jet lag. And I'm telling you, Kevin, it's not an inevitable part of long haul travel. I have traveled, I work across 6 continents. I travel sometimes 200, 300,000 miles a year. I travel across continents all the time. I show up halfway around the world, stand in front of a stage and speak, get back on a plane and fly back. I do this stuff all of the time, and I never have jet lag. Never. Why? Because I've mastered a system. And guess what? It starts on the inside. So because of that, I just said, this is crazy. I wanted to write this book for 15 years. And finally, I'm putting pen to paper. I'm going to get it out because people needlessly suffer from jet lag. You plan for a holiday, you plan for a great trip where you're going to be speaking in front of people, you plan for a big important meeting, and you're sitting there trying to keep your eyes open during the event, right? That's just not, it doesn't serve you, and it holds us back from our greatness. So I'm doing it. I'm writing the book, and it's coming out hopefully by the end of this year.
Okay, I am going to propose 2 reservations on that book. Not misgivings, but like a dinner reservation. One, we'd like to talk with you about it. I really love stuff like what we call the mechanics of the workplace, and that's a big one. Getting on planes, being in hotels, in airports, how you sleep, how you eat. So I really would like to speak with you once that manuscript's ready for reading.
Thank you.
And
yeah, I'm excited.
Like with this book, we will read it cover to cover and make notes.
Thank you.
2 is, since we're here in this beautiful island city, I'd love to propose, and you see what you think, maybe just half a dozen folks around a lunch table who could read your book and just hear you talk about it.
Sure. And actually,
from your basic client base, I'm thinking of Sage clients who are all, keen folks trying to figure out what to teach their people.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And you're talking about the Forgotten Choice or the jet lag book on
jet lag.
Okay.
Jet lag book.
Because one of the things about the jet lag book is I'm also looking for people who will take a survey about it. I've got a survey that's up and going, so I'd love to get more inputs on that too. Help me, help. Because I haven't had jet lag for so long, but I have had many people reach out. It's been, I don't even understand it anymore. Like, how does it work? Tell me about what the experience is. Yeah. And this has been great. So actually, I have a survey that I'm fielding to help understand what are the typical challenges, how do you approach it, et cetera. So.
32-year-old me would have been an awesome survey taker for you. But if you would like some great survey takers, we will find you some off the Sage client base. A lot of our clients have a real web of offices across Southeast Asia. And a number of the more senior individuals, unsurprisingly, are, now in Paris and now in Tokyo and now in Warsaw and now in Toronto.
Yeah. Well, and I work with C-suite of major organizations, usually in the $1 billion to $2 billion range. It's kind of my sweet spot. I like that size of business because it's just on the cusp of that massive greatness. And so anyway, they are global remits, right? They have global remits. They're traveling across, 6 continents. And that's very much what I did for many, many years, and I still do for many years, although I do a lot of online now. But the point is, how do you manage that and arrive in the way you want, in the perfect condition for how you want to be when you arrive? That's the key. Yeah.
How much fun. Okay, well, we will connect with you after this, figure out a way to support the survey with some high quality participants.
Thank you.
And then bookmark our seat with you to
Great.
talk about the book once it's ready for release.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate that.
Yeah. We're very pleased to be connected with you. And even though you're not our very first Singapore author, we rarely get them. So how nice to speak with you in the hometown.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate it too. It was really good to connect, and I appreciate your fun questions. You weren't too challenging.
Oh, we can do another round if you like.
Wasn't that challenging?
Beautiful. Thank you,
All
Brenda.
right.
Have a
Thank
great
you.
afternoon.
All the very best.